Hello.
Hi, Mary. Hi, everyone.
Hi. How can I say your name?
Larson.
Orson. Okay. Just like it sounds. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Thanks for asking.
No problem. No one else is jumping on just chat. Is it still okay? It's just, yeah. People take a few minutes. How's your week?
Good. I finally found time on Friday to join the calls.
Yeah. Good.
What about you?
Oh, it's been a good week. A
That's
lot
good.
of people that I've been talking to about the course and just I did I put together a small course of like my advocacy template and that so I've been pushing that out and having people sign up and ask about that. So it's been fun.
Nice. Nice. I'm still waiting on approval to register for the course. It
That's
looks
okay.
really good though. It's very good, very comprehensive, it looks like. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully there's space.
I'm sure there'll be space. I can always make extra room for somebody in my community.
Thank you.
Hi Jane, welcome.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
Does anybody care if I stay off video because I've been on so much today?
Always fine in my book. Especially on a Friday. I think that should just be a rule. It's like the new casual Friday would just be like camera off Friday.
Oh, I love that. You are my superhero right now. Camera off Friday. That's a new thing for me. Oh boy. I usually give people a few minutes to hop on Fridays. By like five after, we'll start getting into who's here and what we're talking about and all of that fun stuff. Um, Sometimes I'll bring things up. Oh, I am doing my course, by the way, for anybody who's interested in that. And on LinkedIn, I have a post where I'm giving away a mini course on my advocacy management template. So if anybody's interested in that, go ahead and message me or whatever. I'm not great at spamming people afterwards, so don't worry about that. I just want to be able to share that so that people see it more. And I finally got around to adding videos and making a little bit more comprehensive for everyone. All righty. What's everyone else working on this week? Did we all take the week off? We're just, oh, okay, reviews. We all took the week off from customer marketing. We have other things to do.
We're in the middle of our annual cab kickoff, so we've been doing our cab recruitment, so that's always fun. Just fresh chance to look at new players and yeah, keep people warm. So that's been fun.
So
Blog
this is
posts, blog posts, blog posts.
blog posts. Okay. Blog posts are good too. Um, well, we'll just get started now. So this week, Jane Menyo from Gong has joined us to one, share a little bit about her goals for this year as far as advanced advocacy and to brainstorm with us on more ways to do that. And she's also working on some life cycle stuff that we might be able to get into. So, welcome, Jane. Thanks for coming. Um, Tell us what you're working on so we can brainstorm with you.
Yeah, we'll love that. And Yeah, so I'm Jane. I head up customer marketing here at Gong. I've been here for just about 3 years, so a lot of our programs are sort of really hitting their sweet spot in maturity. So for me this year, a lot of what we're looking to do is, yeah, how do we, you know, one, make sure that the programs we have today are sort of like operating in like in an efficient manner. So like sort of achieving more of the operational excellence aspect, so that we aren't ever like dropping the ball on any one program or overburdening ourselves with too many initiatives at one time, right? So a lot of what I've been doing is from like more of our calendaring standpoint has been looking at sort of the seasonality of the different programs that we might be running and where that means we're focusing on. So I think for us, looking at the programs that we're running today and then how those match up to different KPIs on what we're delivering back for the business's needs in any given quarter. So how do we make sure that that sort of marries up to each other? That's kind of one general area that I'm sort of helping us focus on. And then the second piece of this is looking at, yeah, in a time where, you know, it's everyone's being asked to do more with less. And, you know, our team feels sometimes like there's more work than we can possibly take on, or we have all these creative ideas and we want to be able to have the space to be able to run those and have all of those tests, which I think is part of what's Gong's marketing has been, you know, really successful at driving in the past too. Is yeah, looking at like, okay, of all the programs that we have today, where can I be aligning some of this to use the powers of marketing automation to scale our efforts? So we've been actually taking a deeper look at all of our programs today to say, you know, as we look at the customer journey and the way that customers are engaging with us and our company and the way we want to be engaging, yeah, how can I map in the right advocacy plays at the right time and place for those customers? So maybe I'll just stop there for a moment and see if that resonates with anyone or if that's kind of what you all are looking to learn about.
Perfect. Yes, I am always looking to learn about everything. Um, does anybody want to share their thoughts so far?
Jane, it's Christine. I've always been interested in how you map different acts of advocacy to the customer life cycle. And at what points, how do you make the decisions that now's time to approach them about a webinar, or now's the time to approach them to be a speaker at a conference, or the traditional things, right? Case studies and reference calls and all of the other little mini pieces that go into the day-to-day.
Yeah. So I think one, I agree. I think there's like so much opportunity there. And I would say, so my background before even customer marketing was like previously coming out of demand gen. So leading a lot of kind of marketing automation programs and then solutions marketing. So I, you know, worked a lot in terms of like what is ultimate like our campaign and journey strategies for engaging with accounts. So I think that's where for me, it's looking to, okay, now that I'm in more of a customer marketing role and, you know, even running the lifecycle marketing for retention and adoption initiatives, how do I use the same skill set to be able to scale up the work on the advocacy front as well? So I think from like, to your point on that, Christine, is we mapped out essentially our personas of the roles, not necessarily like the personas of their titles, but like the roles within our account, and also to at like the segment level, and map that back to like what are the acts of advocacy we would like to drive with those types of people or be expecting that we would be able to achieve with those folks. So that's where we kind of manage it to what we look at as sort of an advocacy pyramid in terms of the profile of the champions and the raving fans that we have with the acts of advocacy that we're trying to drive. So that was sort of our first phase. And then the second phase was actually going in and teasing out a little bit more detail about those personas. How are we expecting to engage with them? And then, yeah, when in the journey would that actually be the right time and place for that to occur? So our thesis on this essentially is that we would have better luck if we're building on the acts of advocacy versus waiting till the end of their success period and then coming in hot with all of it and then walking away and never retouching them again. So essentially we want to be building on relationships over time with these people. So this is where I think we're playing around with almost this like give get aspect of this, is like, how do we give things that maybe are more like profile raising, but they're less testimonial and like less opportunities where it's not the hard hitting advocacy asks, but to help us like build more open door relationships. So for me, that sort of those early days, especially when it's more on the executive level programs that we have, you know, looking at how do I bring these people to have a seat at the table at our events where I can actually go and meet them and start to build that personal relationship, or how do we come in early to engage in their customer account calls so that we can start to build a face to name. And then, yeah, as we kind of continue to go along that journey, when we start to weave in more asks there. I think where we're initially starting, and we have some of these in play today, is more on the scale-based front. So where we can drive what I see as like more scaled acts of advocacy. So for us, that's reviews, references, referrals, which can be a wider pool of advocate profiles for us that we have the opportunities to engage. So things that we would take any of our customers and users to drive as long as they're happy, versus some of the more high touch programs where it's more time intensive from our standpoint to drive on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jennifer Blanco had a suggestion in the chat. Can you see that, Jane? Or
Yeah, I'm just seeing it now. Yeah, so I think, yeah, and this is kind of where we're building it. I think the first thing we did was actually tapped on to like existing engagements. So I think the toughest part about our lifecycle marketing in general has been, we want to attach to the journey that the customer is going through with our business, right? So what are those different stages in their customer journey? And then what are the engagements that they're driving with their CSM? So that we can actually be complementary to those and have those as data points to attach to. So as we've started to unlock some of those in more of that general life cycle front, for again, retention and adoption, we've started to identify like, where can we also drive plays for these advocacy types of asks? So one of the examples is at, I think it is like the 6-month time frame, we drive an NPS push for our business to help gauge kind of our CSAT scores and customer success metrics, which helps us understand from a business standpoint, like the success of the health of the account as part of our sort of gain site scoring. But we actually use as an opportunity for any net promoters, we asked them to leave a G2 review. And now we're actually looking at, okay, since we already know that this is a really successful play for us, it's helped drive the majority of our reviews on G2. So we almost have to do no point in time campaigns. It's almost all automated at this stage. Why don't we just back on to building that out into a larger nurture? So some of the other activities we're looking to drive on that is, okay, let's do a little bit more profiling. So if the first ask is to leave a review and we see that people took the bait and they were happy to leave a review, can we ask them to be a reference if they're of the right profile for a reference program, so we can actually target them? And if they're not the right reference profile, can we instead give them the referral opportunity? Hey, is there anyone you know in your network who would be interested in Gong? So we're actually designing a little bit more in terms of the profile with the ask and then tacking those into a nurtured plan.
I love you have so many customers, sorry, so many customers at Gong, and then so many users within those customers as well. So the amount of data you must have to be able to go through and build out these profiles sounds so exciting, but also maybe a little overwhelming. Like, what is the most indicative of customers becoming these long-term advocates? What is that review or reference profile? And I'd love to see some of that.
Yeah, yeah. Like, what is the profile of like the right champion?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it depends. Like, we want to make more champions than less, but I think we only have the capacity to drive true like relationship building with the right profiles, right? So I think that's again where we sort of tree out the scaled based activities with the high touch, and sort of we look at actually like our time internally of resourcing of like our ability to take on projects for both of those things. So where we look at, our cab as more of that high touch programming where we are using it as a relationship building moment, and then again some of these others are more scaled. um, from the persona standpoint, yeah, we actually, it's interesting on our life cycle side, we divide out our journey for customers into an account journey and a user journey, because a user in particular, because our products are sales facing and there's constantly new sales apps being hired into companies, a user can join Gong at any time, but an account gets stood up on its own. So what we have is this account journey, which has different phases of success, where we look at, okay, when do they actually move through their implementation cycle for us to be able to say, okay, we can actually start to look at, are they being successful and what are we going to drive at this point in time? Versus a user where we want to just understand, how have they been leveraging Gong today? Are they successful? So we've done a lot of work to understand those data points. On the account level side, we have more of the data that we're actually pulling in from Salesforce, so we can actually say like where they're at in their journey, and then using some of that health score information to understand at the account level if there's risk, so we should be holding back. And then at the user level, we can understand, we have access through like our product team to be able to understand if people are using the product and where they're actually at in terms of logins, and achieving like key milestones that we might have in that user journey too. So for us, it's definitely been a lot of partnering with the stakeholders, or thinking about the broader aspects of the journeys so that we can develop the life cycle around each of those too.
Yeah, that's excellent. And because you have so many customers and so many users, you've had to kind of drill down into who is a good advocate for which activities, like you said, the review profile and things like that. Like, I'm sure anybody can go and leave a review for Gong on G2 and sites like that, but do you want just anybody to be a reference? So that's interesting. And if you have any points or surprising data points that you found along the way that you can think of, that'd be great to hear. But Tiffany has a question, so I'm gonna let her go.
Thanks. Really helpful, Jane. I love this session. It's exciting. So when you say you're pulling all this information, is it all, so you're flagging everything, right, in SFDC? Do you also use Gainsight? Does the CS team use Gainsight? And then when you export all this information, like, are you putting it in like Visio or a flow chart, or how are you diagramming the account journey and those types of things to be able to share with the organization? And then do you own the lifecycle marketing piece, or do you collaborate with an email person, which I had in the past, where we would work on the content together and she would actually go into HubSpot and build it out, right? And we would go through copy and graphics together. So I'm curious how you get that all together, because that's a lot of great information.
Yeah, I would say from maybe the account journey aspect, I think partnered with our CS team who is building the journey, to actually inform on what the stages might be and the success metrics of when they would have, sort of from our standpoint, entry and exit criteria for the life cycle. So what do we deem as a milestone that we can attach to? And then actually, yeah, the harder part was then operationally like building that. So some of that is even still early days where we have some success milestones, but we don't have the later stage ones that we're looking for, which I think too, from the advocacy standpoint, that's where I'm kind of in a holding pattern of, okay, those ones where we know like, okay, they've like reached sort of the pinnacle of success with our company. Like that's obviously where I would want to come in for some of those bigger asks. So when we're at the early stages, we're saying, okay, like where can we still be playing around with this access to data today? So that was from the account journey. What was the other part of your question? You have to remind me.
Yeah, so you work with someone else to put like the life cycle marketing or the nurture campaigns together, right? And then you execute that.
Yeah.
Because there's always, sorry, that fear of you're touching them too much, like marketing is kind of doing this and they kind of want to do something. And now we're hitting them with 2 emails because we're trying to get traction for a trade show and they normally would get this on this certain day.
Yeah. So we actually did a lot of work to help us better manage the point in time campaigns. So what we looked at is like point in time versus like journey based. So journey based, which might be comms time to activities that are happening at, yeah, again, the user or the account level versus campaigns that may be timed to launches or events or other things that we're driving. Our comm schedule was very heavy. And so we had a lot of concerns about the impact that was going to drive to our performance overall. So we had to start actually doing a lot more of that like triage exercise for our existing engagement campaigns. And then from the CS side too, I think that is where we had to work through sort of like a rules of engagement between two groups of when is a CS play versus a marketing play happening, like because we both have the tools to drive engagement at scale, doesn't mean we should both be using them or for which purposes. So there was actually ways that we sort of carved out a lot of that. They were doing more account level when it came to like management, but we were doing more of the communications from the business, so to say. So that was definitely a long exercise, and I think one that we had a lot of refinement on and continues to be. Yeah, I think that was like definitely a trickier part to navigate. Ultimately ended up with us putting together more of a governance structure, but I think that's something that's still work in progress. And then from where it sits, so the more encompassing lifecycle marketing was sitting in my team, but that's actually just moved into our demand room group or recently, particularly because they're more formally owning upsell numbers, so on multi-product that we have. And so, yeah, we kind of collaborate more so as strategists and then kind of maintaining that CS relationship there. So helping be sort of business stakeholders and inform. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. Jane, I just want to point out something that you were talking about, that governance kind of thing that you're working on with who's kind of overseeing these communications and such. Erwin Hipsman, that was recently, he just recently left Forrester, did a project with this internally, maybe last year or the year before. So if it's something that you're still looking on improving or working through, it might be good to connect with him.
Oh yeah. And yeah, I've chatted with Erwin before. So he actually built out like a governance structure.
So he was part of putting together they called it a board, but it sounds very similar. A committee board of people internally, and how they were going to manage all of these customer communications.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think for us too, because it was like we actually had to start in different phases of, okay, let's, because our product also has a lot of product comms that come directly from the product, but that obviously has its own sort of look and feel. But, when we think of the overall customer experience of what does that mean when they're hearing from our business, we wanted to work out, okay, let's work through the more one-to-one scaled engagement from, the business aspect of it before we get into like the product aspect, because there are a lot of ways that customers can hear and learn from us and different preferences that people take into account too.
Yeah, absolutely. Eliana has her hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, I'll show you my face while I ask you. I want to go back to part of what you were mentioning when answering Tiffany's question about how lifecycle and upsell it has moved to the demand gen team. I'm curious how Gong approaches cross-selling existing customers, like where does that responsibility lie, and how is customer marketing part of that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was within customer marketing, but then it just moved over here at Gong. And predominantly because it's like some of our core pipeline drivers. So they're sort of taking the reins from here. But we did sort of build a lot of the early days foundations for it. So And I've owned pipeline in customer marketing at a previous company too, when we'd had multi-product. So where it wasn't in the demand gen group, but they were more of our center of excellence to run the campaigns. So where we would actually be more strategists on the plays we wanted to run, and then they would do the execution and like measurement and then like feedback on optimization. So here, Gong, we are actually in very surprisingly for the size of our company and our marketing team, which is all about, I think, maybe 60 or so folks, we're just building a sort of center of excellence model in our demand gen group. So I think for efficiency of scale, it's not quite at the level to do business stakeholder input into a center of excellence, because they're just literally developing that. And it'll probably been another year before it's at maturity. Yeah, so at this point, I mean, I think that's where we then own more of like the advocacy, or which I think it's not just the capturing of successful and happy customers. I think there's also work that needs to be done to drive to that, and then also help uncover that. But that's where we would then sort of drive strategies that recommend plays that we could be running for those programs, if that makes sense.
And yes, and I'm wondering, where does product marketing fit into all of this? Are they on the DG team? Are they with you? There's so many stakeholders when it comes to customer marketing, and like it's hard to navigate.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I actually do sit under product marketing. I report into like our SVP product marketing. So when we were running more of the cross sell, we would collaborate with product marketing, where they would be more delivering on the messages, and we would be doing sort of mutual campaign ideation, like what are the thematic content approaches we want to be taking, what campaign plays do we want to drive, and then how do we actually drive that as complementary with field programming, because I think that's where they would drive a little bit more of the heavier like sales engagement or like enablement aspects of that. But yeah, now they kind of work directly through our campaign demand gen function. So product marketing goes now to demand gen for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, it's such great information you're sharing. I could just listen to you go on for a while. How can we help you? What would you like to brainstorm? We have quite a few people on the call that have a lot of experience, I think. So let's see what we can do to help you as well.
Cool. I love it. Well, maybe I'll show you a couple of the slides of the things I've been referring to, and would love to get some feedback on them. Here, let me just pull it up for a minute. But this is essentially what we're building out for this life cycle advocacy engagement. Oops. Sharing the screen. Okay. So again, I think I sort of talked through this, but like where we manage it to more of this advocacy hierarchy, which I think probably you have all seen a version of this at some point, but essentially we mapped out for us, like what are those profiles that we want to be leveraging? And then again, what are sort of the different plays that we would drive to amplify their acts of advocacy? So this is sort of that persona to like desired state of advocacy that we map to. But as we talked about too, I think there's some aspect of managing up the pyramid as well, of it's not that the high profile folks are only going to be doing these acts of advocacy. There's also the opportunities for them to kind of move up the funnel of advocacy asks. So again, where do we build on some of those earlier lightweight moments of advocacy before we come in with the harder hitting asks, like media opportunities or customer stories, or again, like webinars and things of that nature. So the more time intensive component. So from my standpoint, I think that helps me from more of that relationship building aspect of how can we come in earlier to drive engagement, but also gives us more like diversity of representation on the different asks that we have through all these different profiles too. So what we did is we took our pyramid here, and then we again mapped out our persona tiers. So what are these different players in the space? where we actually map out, it's again, not necessarily a persona based on just the title, but like our ideal state from more of their role-based activity. And then if we have a tier for them, so that might mean a tier 1, sure, it may be like common or like a VP and above title, but perhaps at like an enterprise grade company, we may actually want to go to a level deeper because that's going to be the champion we have today. And that's maybe as high reaching as we might get for a period. So the tiering aspect, actually, this is, and I think Tiffany, this might have gone back to your question too, is like, how do we do that matching of like the person with the role? And this is where it does get a little bit more complex for us. But we can actually say like we have different opportunities that come into different plays that we want to run. So here too, on the like the far right, you can see like what are those acts of advocacy again that we may want to drive with them. So like for example, on the tier, this is like these are our more scale-based tiers, tier 3, 4, and 5, where we're saying, hey, there's still a place for these people. If they're happy, we want to be embracing that. We want to be engaging that. We just can't maybe spend the cycles to do an interview and a case study, and they may not be able to speak on our main stage, but let's still embrace them in the ways that we can. So this is where we too like map out those acts of advocacy to what I consider like almost like the calories of effort for us to put into these. And we kind of map that back into our activity levels for how we drive high touch engagement and scaled engagement. So this is actually a mirror to what we've done. This kind of actually comes out of some of the Forrester serious decision frameworks for lifecycle and journey marketing. But we're applying it back into more of our customer marketing aspects here. Then I'll show you this. So that's kind of like our menu of advocacy again, but this mapping of those experiences, and this is the piece I really would love to get everyone's feedback on here. But when we start to then apply it, so this is kind of those tiers again, mapped to the stages of the journey. And so we're saying, okay, if we actually now have data that we can attach to on these stages, how can we either automate some of those acts of advocacy or drive flags to our team to know when to act on it? So let's say, for example, if I wanted to have an early days relationship building moment with an executive sponsor, particularly an enterprise grade account, you know, I can come on and invite them to be a podcast speaker, right? This is a thought leadership, lightweight, don't have to talk about gong opportunity, but we can come in and actually have an ask for them early days before they've even actually gone through their implementation or they're too far out from finding success with our company, right? But we can start to embrace them in that way. And then when they actually get into more of our value realization stages, this is when they are seeing the success from Gong. So now that we know that they're in this stage, we can open up this like broader pool of success opportunities to capture, where they can be a little deeper in the type of content that they would provide or thought leadership that they would act on. So again, this is kind of where, you know, we're starting to map in our acts of advocacy moments to our menu, to our personas, and trying to drive this all together. So this is where I'd love to get any thoughts from the group. What other opportunities would you see successful? If you were thinking of some of those successful plays you've run, where did that happen in your journey or the customer journey?
Awesome. So this in the column that says renewal and expansion, is that saying when they are in like that window of renewal and expansion, or is that saying when like and asking them to do things, or is it saying when they're in that window of renewal and expansion and you want to get other people to give them references and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, this is purely from the advocacy like asks of them. So we have kind of this similar map of engagements that we drive on behalf of like the CSMs, or that we would do as complementary plays to help drive account success or user success. And we actually have like a very deep mapping of that at each persona level of like what scaled comms are we driving at each stage in the journey, which is pretty cool. So from this standpoint, this is like that flip side to it of like, if that's the give, what's the like the get on this, and like where would we want to come in for more of those advocacy opportunities?
Okay. All right. Who has opinions and wants to share? Go ahead, Tiffany. Are you talking?
This is great. Yeah, sorry. I was trying to find because I had to make it bigger so I could see everything and minimize it to unmute myself. This is really great, Jane. So my question is, what are the timelines here from the time they implement Gong? Because I don't know if it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or 3 to 4 weeks, right? And then from there, is MPS done 6 months after they officially sign where it's automated, or is it 3 months the first MPS? Because we did ours at Maven Link 6 months and then 12 months to the time like they sign, because you have to pick some deciding factor, right? And it's hard, like, did they implement in 90 days or did they implement in 6 months? Because sometimes there's issues and people have to work through things, right? So we did 6 months, 12 months, and then after that, if they gave us like an 8, 9, or 10, I would automate that on top of that to ask them for a review, right? If we think that, okay, they're probably going to give us a great review. So that's kind of how I did it. I'm curious how long your process takes.
Yeah, I think that is where we are trying to similarly map that, and then also get smarter with the different parameters that we might have on the different types of accounts. So for us, an enterprise grade account may, yeah, a commercial account for us, or like a SMB level account could be
Right.
set up within a matter of a couple weeks, right? So pretty straightforward. But an enterprise grade organization, a lot of the times they may do sort of like internal pilots where they're group testing it, they're refining their own, because there's a lot of their own internal workflows that they need to drive attached to the product itself. So there may be almost like these different phases. And that's where I think for us, the partnership with our CS and our CS op team has been so essential, is because if we want to know that exit and entry criteria, we actually have to have that in a data source, right? Where they may have that in like their own kind of QBR notes, or sort of like we actually have to say, no, 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 if it doesn't exist in Salesforce as a field, like you can't give a drop down, like it has to actually like be a field. We can't run our plays against this. So particularly I think for a lot more of like our retention and adoption plays, that's where we've been able to come in as a stakeholder to say, we can run all these series of programs to complement the work that you're doing in the customer journey to our CS team. But we actually have to have that data. And if we don't have the data, we can't run it. So even to the level of data cleanliness on roles, I think that's another one that's sort of been a challenge or problematic, and particularly in accounts that, yeah, maybe have been with us for a while, and those people may change over time too. So I think that's where we have to come in and have that exchange with them of, we can drive the benefits you're looking for to, scale a little bit more of your engagements with your accounts, but you have to help give us that access to the data to make that successful. Similar on the renewal side, I think that's been where we have different contracts that have renewal dates. Some are like 1-year contracts, some are 2 or 3-year contracts. So when we might actually run that play might be different. So somebody could be in that value realization stage, and rather than wait for the renewal time frame to maybe invite them to our cab, we can make that more of a 1-year approach. So I think this is where some of this work, we want it to almost be based more on flags than automation of the exercise, so that we can still control a little bit more of that. But we're sort of using those as like frameworks for when to engage.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
Jane.
how many nurture campaigns do you generally have running? Do you have one for enterprise, one for SMB and mid-market? Because we kind of categorize our customers the same way or target them in that way.
Yeah, today we don't, because even our customer journey framework is so new. I mean, Gong is a company, I think we're only 7 years old, so we didn't have like a very robust journey framework. So right now we're kind of playing to the middle as it is, and going kind of mid-market and above for a lot of these programs. We also have our more commercial SMB spaces managed like a pooled CS digital customer success model. So they have their own sort of suite of plays that they'll be running too. So there's a little bit of a complement on that. Yeah.
And Bria just asked, how large is your CM team?
That's a good question. I think maybe we're around 300 today. I don't actually know the right number. Yeah.
Your customer marketing team is 300
Oh,
people?
customer marketing. I thought you said CSM. Our customer marketing team. So well, 2 are now in demand gen. So there were 5, and now we're down to 3 plus me. So customer advocacy is a team of 4.
Ah, okay. That's much less than 300.
No, I don't know of anyone who has a 300-person customer marketing team.
Yeah, so
And
wow.
Jane, can I ask a question? Hi, it's Maria Sturgeon. And is that team, because it's very obviously 4 is a small group. How are you focused? Like, where are your focused areas?
Yeah, I think that's where actually a lot of our work has been. We kind of align ourselves to the pyramid. So we actually say, like, how are we dividing out our work? Where I have 2 people who are more focused on, well, I have like a full-time headcount who's sort of more focused on this like base of programs, but also does a lot more of like our back end tracking for all of our acts of advocacy. So it's kind of me repurposing some of our influitive instance to be our tracking of all things advocacy, but driving also the programming within that. And then the other 3 of us, I'd say, are sort of more in this kind of middle to high value. I think this is where we're also trying to divide out a little bit of that is the high value, I think, is more of like our corporate targets of where we want to be driving for. So from where I view it is I want us to be able to focus more of our time on actually building relationships and having, customer engagement like opportunities where we're actually building our own sort of book of business as it is. And so I think to do that, we need to be able to really scale a lot of the efforts we're doing in kind of the middle tier of activities or programmatically running a lot of our plays together. Does that
And
answer
the team at all? I didn't see in some of like the customer journeys, and maybe I just missed this activities. Like, are you handling like RFPs, reference calls as well?
For like, yeah, we are doing the reference and referrals and everything too. We put that in sort of our scaled work.
Okay.
I think too, some of it does need more of that high touch. So that's not all kind of automated today.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I am just floored. Every week I have these calls and, different calls I'll be like, "Oh, wow, that was really cool." And I'll walk away from it, but this one I'm going to have to go back and listen to and go through it all again because all of it is just so exciting for me. Thank you for coming, Christine. So based on the things that you're doing at scale, how are you going about doing that? Is it something like you're setting up Zapier or your marketing automation to send out certain emails? Or are you trying to like bring together some of these groups of people like your C-level or the VPs? Like I know sometimes in different industries, they like to meet and kind of get to know other people in similar roles. Is that anything that you've also been covering? Is there any, do you work with like the community team as well?
Yeah, I work very, very closely with our community team here. They actually sit in CS, so that's kind of a nice partnership that we work together on. In a previous role, community sat within customer marketing, so it managed it more directly. I would say from like the broader sense of programs, we do our customer advisory board. And then that's actually one of the areas that this year we're focused on is, how do we do a little bit more advocacy activation programs where we're either driving sort of more of those kinds of meetup programs purely for the purposes of helping us drive that networking and engagement, and then also help us with the relationship building. So whether it's us kind of being the primary owner of that, or again working with our events team who has a pretty heavy strong cadence of campaigns and sort of events that target a similar audience, is where do I make sure that when I have my target wish list of all the advocates that I want to be engaging with, or that we think that we need to have stronger relationships with, how do I champion their abilities to be in targeted for programs where they may not have otherwise been. So it's kind of a complementary effort on that. Part of that too is, you know, we look at those profiles for some of those speaking opportunities or the fireside chat, you know, panelists, and like ways that we can actually drive an active advocacy at the same time as some of those programs too.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to, I don't know, help me out here. What kind of numbers are you looking at for this, your advocacy group? So there's 10,000 advocates and 3,000 are your C-level and VPs. Like,
Yeah.
is there a breakdown like that you can share? Because that helps me think
Yeah.
about how I would scale.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that we track it in a few different ways. What I actually look at is I call it my advocacy TAM is oh, I was just gonna see if I actually had it in this deck, but I don't think I do. It's almost the flip version of this where I basically manage a lot of our advocacy like a sales pipeline, right? Is we have to look at like, what's the TAM that we can actually go out to engage for advocacy? And that's where I look at, okay, what's the landscape of accounts that are healthy? What's the landscape of accounts that are mature with our product, where we have different like qualifying criterias for that? Okay, that helps me then better profile what my opportunities are to go and reach in those different areas. And we've had a lot of different initiatives that, you know, have sort of annual timeframes. So last year, for example, ours was heavily focused on, you know, multi-product or customers who are more mature in their product usage that we wanted to be getting as customer stories. So a lot of our work was looking at those accounts and then understanding like, okay, what's the percent of accounts we think is achievable for us to be getting as advocates in this? And that's based on the happiness score. So actually for this year, I have for 2 of our products, my KPI is based on a percent of happy accounts. So I look at all of our live accounts, and then my aim is to have 15% of our total accounts by the end of the year with those products be acting as an advocate, a high value advocate. So anything but sort of like references and, or excuse me, anything outside of reviews on some of our other scaled activities. Other times we like the previous year, our focus was more so on industries. So how would we have more industry representation? And so we were looking at, okay, like of the core industries that our business is focusing on, again, like what's the TAM look like? Who are those accounts? Where are they at in their journey with us? You know, are we going to be able to get them to have success stories with us? I think that was almost even like its own exercise of like a micro instance of looking at a journey level. Okay, like let's say we're going to be focusing on business services companies that we want to get success stories out of. And we've got, let's just say 200 accounts in that group. So that's my TAM. And then I look at like, where are they actually at in their journey? Okay, so, you know, maybe only 70 of those accounts are actually in that kind of value realization, or they've gone through their first renewal, or they're kind of at that level of more success. So that's really the ones that we want to go out and be able to get a case study target from, because they'd be able to include some of that use case story and the success metrics that we would want to have as part of our qualifying criteria for the story. But those other accounts, you know, if we know we're hungry to build and grow in the business services industry, we still want to get acts of advocacy. So again, like where can I look for more early days of acts of advocacy within those groups to help fulfill the business's needs while we may be still reaching maturity on those success story type of qualifiers. So yeah, I think our KPIs that we manage kind of come in different flavors based on the needs that we're trying to help meet for the company. It's a really good question, because I think KPIs for advocacy can sometimes be squishy, right? I'm curious of others too, like how you're developing your KPIs too. Yeah, because I think, you know, just the output delivery is not always the best measurement of success for advocates too, right? It's all sort of dependent on, you know, what's happening in the business or what the business needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my question on the numbers was more about the number of people in the
Mhm.
groups,
Yeah.
um, and like less around the KPIs. But yeah, KPIs are very interesting in our space because it depends on your company, where your company's at, where you're at with the life cycle and customer success, and how old your advocacy program is. Um, Tiffany did ask, do you use Influitive to manage reference requests, and what does your process look like? And then what indicators do you use to determine happiness?
Yeah, we do use Influitive for our references. We have sort of two flows today. One that we use for, again, more like scaled access or yeah, a little bit more turnkey programming. So where it's just a little bit more of an automated, um, the rep goes into Salesforce at the opportunity level. That's where they request a reference. Request comes into us. We help with that matching aspect. Um, and then the other one is more of an executive level where we try to cull down the intake process for them, or even just do back-end management only, because I think we want to maintain more of that white glove feel. So whether that's at an enterprise grade account, or if it's a more of an executive reference, that we want to lower the bar on their ability to join the program. So we've been running it in two ways, and also just trying to measure, like, yeah, what is the easiest way to simplify that breakdown too, for both of those programs. And then our happiness measurement, yeah, again, we use our Gainsight health scores as sort of a proxy for helping us understand at account level. But then we use NPS at the individual level. I also look at how they're engaging with our content. So I go and I look at actually like all the marketing activities that they've been involved with, from a sort of, especially on the key stakeholder champions. And then actually we spend a lot of time in Gong directly. I don't know if anyone has access to Gong, but I mean, being able to go in and look at the account and say, yeah, what is our relationship with these people? When was their last touch? When have they been on a call with us? And was there an executive from our company there? A lot of the times just being able to get direct access to that type of sentiment, joining in like listening in on a call, like hearing their reactions, hearing their feedback, has been really helpful for us. I think too, from that standpoint, we often see that, CSMs too, like the kinds of engagement, the feedback they might be hearing sometimes is not always representative of customer sentiment too, right? So like you think about your own relationships with vendors, sometimes, you may love the product, but you're day in and day out, you're trying to solve for issues, or you're trying to overcome to get to that next level, or like, improve on your own workflow. So like you may have these like kind of account level blockers, but you're actually still a happy customer. And so I think that's where we take a lot of this insight at, not to be hard coded, right? We actually like kind of read between the lines, or say, well, there's still maybe an opportunity for them to engage. And I think that's where we've had to also educate internally to help people understand that too, is there's still opportunities, even if they're, they're going through something and trying to get to that next level, their company, they could still be a raving fan of our products.
Right. What is it that you have questions for us about, so I can support you in any way? Thanks for answering that. And I have some ideas around how we manage. It's in Salesforce, and then they fill out a form, and then it triggers us, like the customer marketing or advocacy team of one. And then we go and we have 10 days to respond, to the request and get whatever profile right for the prospect to get on, the customer to get on the prospect call.
Mhm.
So what are your questions that you have? And maybe I can help you.
Yeah, and you do that with Influid as well?
Yes, well, it's in that instance is in SFDC, so it triggers us. They fill out the form, and then I go into Influid and I can like ask for a hand raise, or I generally kind of know in my mind who I can text to get them on the call too. So I have really good relationships, and a lot of time creating that stickiness. Like, I'm not just asking you for help, but I can help you, because sometimes, CS is like, I've called this guy so many times and he won't take my call or accept a meeting. But then I can ping him and say, hey, we just want to come and visit you and see how you're doing and do a quarterly business review and tell you how we can help support you or take you to the next level. And so I help them get into accounts that they don't have relationships with. So that's a good way to create stickiness to help each other and not us asking them for help all the time. So
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, that exchange. I think we do a lot too. Like we have an EBX, like an executive business experience group that supports a lot more of our enterprise group. So partnering with them and my ABM team, again, like that gives us the opportunity to work in through them of like, okay, we're not going to add one more body to the room to, add to this experience. It's a very closed door experience, but hey, if you're going to be that seat at the table for marketing, can you facilitate that introduction? And that's been really helpful for us too. Particularly as they may have gotten through other levels of their own marketing group to kind of facilitate that event in the first place. So that I think, again, like a marketing partnership helps us in a lot of ways too.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really just going back to the KPIs that you were talking about, because we only have a few minutes left. I just wanted to say that I'm super happy to talk to other people in the community and see like what they're doing at this advanced advocacy level and put together a call where you can talk to others that have a very similar type of program. So let me know if you'd like me to do that, because I know Kevin used to work at Adobe, so obviously they had a lot of advocates and things like that. But we have some people with large groups of advocates as well. I wondered if you have ever used user evidence or like Tech Validate to help with some of this bulk approach, this mass approach to the advocacy.
Yeah, we're user evidence users, and yeah, we use it pretty regularly. It's been great, especially when we had some of those more targeted campaigns, whether for different products or different industries, or different personas even. That's been really great for us to capture. And then of course to beyond going just a survey, it's now public content. One of the cool things where I'm just kind of plug this one because it's a fun one, but we're in our awards season right now, and we actually use user evidence as our awards survey input, because part of that survey is then we ask, can we use this externally? And so that automatically puts that hub for us together of all of these great stories, whether they're going to be the finalists or not, that we can start to showcase. I think that's one of the ways that we're also looking, because at least the way that user evidence contract is structured, it's not limited by the number of surveys like Tech Validate is. So we can do more journey-based timing for those too. So we can have open-ended surveys that run based on account triggers or user triggers, versus only point in time programming too. So that's also a big shift for us, for how we can drive a little bit more of that scale-based input too.
Yeah, and I like that they're working with on AI and how they can use that to create the case studies and even the content databases and things like that. I think it'll be interesting to see how they change that over time. But maybe there's room for them to put together a call for their larger customers to come together and talk about more around their advocacy approaches for these large groups. So I'll reach out to Evan and bug him about it.
Yeah, we would love that. Their founders are really great, always responsive to ideas for product development too, which is really nice.
Yes, they really are. Well, Jayden, just thank you so much for hopping on and sharing today. And I will follow up to make sure that you see value from, coming on today and talking more about your own questions and the way you want to brainstorm. And this has just been super fun to look at. And I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. And thank you all. Like I said, getting the opportunity to hear feedback on the program as we're building it out, and taking it to the next level is really helpful for me. So I appreciate the community coming together for each other. So thanks for letting me join it.
All right. Well, I will be in touch, and everybody have a good week.
Thanks, all.
Thanks. Thanks, Jane. It was awesome. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye.